I think, for the past however many games, it's win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And we just ended on a loss. So I feel like, it's only right, to continue that streak at least for one more game. And then, just, see where things go from there.
All right, that was Hunter Dickinson. Welcome in Tuesday afternoon live, March the 15th. The Maize and Blue Review. We're here every weekday at 1 o'clock discussing the latest in Michigan sports. And today is no different with the exception of bringing in an expert guest, and that is Brandon Justice, the senior editor of TMBR, who you see there adjusting his hat. He's ready to go.
It's off center. I got to get it on center. I got to look the part, Dennis. I got to act like I'm a senior editor around here.
It's okay. The style sometimes is kind of, I've seen Kanye, your boy, sometimes he wears a full face covering.
Yes. Two correct assumptions there. Kanye is my boy, and he does wear it in a way that is unorthodox. So, like most things, he does, which I'm sure we can save for another show. Maybe an independent podcast. Who knows?
I'm down for talking the latest in music and what's popular and what's there, what should be, and all of that. I was thinking today. I was just looking at the schedule. We're going to get to all of it, but there was a time I remember when they came up with these play-in games. I sat around screaming for a couple of days. I was angry, don't screw with the most perfect thing. The NCAA tournament, it always, brings it. You're going to have everything you need, but just like everything in sports, you add on, and this is garbage. You don't want to. The play-in game doesn't count. I'm not watching it. And then a couple of years later, Michigan was in it, and I was like, okay, well, I had to watch, and they were able to get into the regular tournament. I still don't like it. I still don't think that they should put – I'm not as angry as I was, when I was younger. I still don't think they should have the 16s playing tonight. Let them get into the tournament. Let them get in where they've already earned it. Make them have a play another Tuesday. Like Indiana, Wyoming is fine, especially if you're hard up for some hoops and you're ready to go. I like the spacing. Sunday, it was just culmination of all year long. Everybody waits for it. And then you get a couple of days off, just take a breath. And then, everything starts up for 4 straight days. But that's a little bit of an aside. I've come to the point where I'm all right with it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's just similar to, I guess it's not. I mean, there's nothing like the NCAA basketball tournament. There's nothing like it. March Madness is an anomaly. It always has been. It always will be. And I think a lot of people share that thought that you had initially when that rolled out. But it's proven to be something that, it could probably use some tweaks. Like if you're an automatic qualifier, I don't think you should have to play in a playing game. So, that I think is something that should be changed. But I mean, outside of that, it kind of creates this showcase, I guess, of these teams, and it gives them a night to have their own standalone games and compete it out. And I was watching John Rothstein, and I was watching him talk about the tournament, what he thinks. And he had something cool to say about the playing game, specifically about how he wishes all these teams were in Dayton for one night and kind of rolled out throughout the day. And they got these games one by one, all in the same spot.
So noon or something, and then take it up to 8. I like that idea.
Yeah. So, and again, and expanding it up to 8. So it's, I mean, hey, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I'm not one to complain about more sports, more basketball, more football, whatever it is. Like I was gonna initially make a comparison to the college football playoff, but it's really nothing similar to that. You really can't. It's apples to oranges at that point, because when you're talking about the playoff, you have 4 teams as opposed to 64, and you're now expanding out to 68. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I like it because it's extra sports. It's like overtime, but before. It's just
why complain about some games? Don't watch them tonight. Nobody's forcing me to turn on the
right.
I do remember before the Big Ten, so it would have been before 97. They didn't have the Big Ten tournament, and you'd be sitting around. It'd be like Michigan Northwestern on the final weekend, And, you'd have the ACC, everybody's going Duke and North Carolina. The crowds are going crazy. And then it cut to like this Michigan Northwestern game. Everybody just going to be like on a Saturday at 2. Like, this is not cutting it. So I am glad that they did go that way. And there is the part where everybody has your shot. You can have as bad as year as possible. And speaking of Northwestern, it's not like they had the baddest year possible, but they could have. Gone from Wednesday and went all the way through Sunday. UConn did it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, they went all the way through their tournament. Then they went all the way through the NCAA
tournament.
Right.
I was going to say, yeah. And then they started, that continued through the tournament.
Yeah. The Qs have done it. It's great. It still is. It's one of those things we know that, and for my money, the football around Labor Day is making it, giving it a run for its money. But the 4 consecutive days starting on Thursday, that Michigan's going to tip everything up at 12:15, and then it'll go past midnight for those first 2 days, all of the games. And then Saturday, you get half of the, and you're still by Sunday, you're sitting around at midnight. You're like, my wife's like, are you crazy? No, it's not crazy though. Yeah. And it's just the commercials that you see over and over again. It's like everything that you dream about it, and hopefully a good way. So
yeah, you dream about that little tone, the CBS sound, the same
That's
one.
right.
The same one we hear every year. It's symbolic. It's almost like the College Game Day song, the original, of course, not the one we've come to know and not love, but it's synonymous with the feeling of the inception of the season. And with this one, it's kind of like the inception of the second season, because to be honest with you, I'm just gonna keep it a buck with everyone at home. College basketball is cool, but like I pretty much only watch during the tournament. Like I watch a ton of Michigan in the Big Ten because it's my job to. And even when I wasn't writing for those year and a half, like I did pay very close attention to the Big Ten and to Michigan. But me personally, like it's this awkward. So my entire life is sports, between writing and between coaching. So with writing it's football, and with coaching it's baseball. And so I have like this tweener time, like this little itty bitty time for like a month and a half where I don't have to do as much sports as usual. Still have to do it like pretty much 24/7, but like just a little bit less than I normally do. Because in the fall it's 70 hours a week sometimes. And then when coaching happens, it's for me, coaching summer and coaching spring, we start now. Our first day of tryouts is yesterday. So we start March 14th, and I won't have an off weekend until the end of July. And I don't say that to complain. I say that just to kind of put into perspective, like how much I'm doing sports between point A and point B. So that like little glimpse of time, like I'm not going to stay up and watch Pac-12 basketball. Like, I'm sorry, America. That's just not what I'm going to do. So to me, it's like the tournament is like, I watch every team and I watch every game and I pay attention to everything and the brackets and, bragging rights with your friends and with the board. Like we have our bracket challenge with the den. So it's a yearly tradition, annual tradition. It's what everyone looks forward to. Like you're not a sports fan if you don't look forward to it. Like I said, like I put all that in perspective because it's like, I'm not a huge basketball guy. Like I never really have been. My dad was like this basketball superstar. I don't know a single thing. I played in 7th grade. That was about it. But like still the tournament has this high regard in my, like, it's a top 3 time of the year for me, so that's how I feel about it. I love
if you're wondering what Justice is talking about, the Wolverine Den, there is a free bracket challenge for members on there. And a little spoiler coming down the line here is I'm cooking up my own tournament to put on that board, which I just secured some prizes about an hour ago. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's the first time that I'm going to be the chairman of the board and of this particular game. So I'm looking forward to that. That's coming your way. What's the new college football song? We're coming to your city. Is that the one? We're coming.
No, I think they updated it again. I think this is a much better angle, by the way. I figured out a new spot for my stand. Experimenting in the middle of the show. You know how it goes with me. I think there's like a Carrie Underwood song now. And so I don't know.
I liked her on the NFL. I liked her on the Sunday Night Football. And then it was Faith.
Maybe that's what it is, and I'm just confusing it.
Well, she does that. I liked Faith Hill and I think Carrie Underwood.
I'll tell you right now, it is.
It just wraps it up. I know there's I don't know who the country band is. Maybe I should know. We're coming to your.
Oh, yeah, that one's Big and Rich.
Big and Rich.
Yeah. What? Zach Brown Band, Stoked. That's what it's called. It's called Stoked by Zach Brown Band. So I don't know. Not for me. I'm more of
A
a
weird thing for me is that when I was, like 20, like college game day has been around for a long time, and I used to sit there and it would be like at the top of the list of everything that I'd ever watch. But then I started doing Michigan pre-games, and which happened at the same time. And then I was on the road with Michigan for like the first 10 or 11 years of my broadcast career. Then I started working on Saturdays, and I could have caught it, but I also wanted to get some things going before, I had to get in there,
right.
get into the
And
studio.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
how I
missed
feel
it. So
too.
for 25 years, I haven't watched very much. I like, I see on Twitter, people will put the signs up, that looks pretty cool. But,
Yeah.
for people to, recite some of the stuff that's going on chapter and verse with there, it's always like,
Mhm.
wow, I've missed it. I've missed 25.
Well, Michigan's such a noon game. It's such a noon game heavy schedule every year. So when you're talking about working, and so when noon games happen, like we just kind of wake up and go. Like there's really no sit down prep for the day. You're doing that the night before. When it comes to noon games, I mean, unless you live in Ann Arbor, then I guess you can kind of afford to make a bagel and make your way to the big house. But I live 45 minutes from there, and on a game day, that's a good hour. So, getting to Ann Arbor is a grind. So for me, it's like I want to be there by 10. So I'm leaving my house by 9, and I'm waking up, showering, and going really. So I don't really have time to watch game day. Like when I was off for the past year, like when I didn't cover this past season, up until November, I watched it. And it's not the same that it used to be by any means. I think everyone knows that. I don't think that's a secret, but yeah, I mean, it's still like a iconic establishment, I guess you could say, within college football. The same that like Greg Gumbel is in college basketball. So.
Yeah, it takes you back before. Like now, if you're going to the games, it's hard unless you go out actually, unless they're like in Ann Arbor. Then it's
Right.
I've never been to one of those where they stand behind everybody's.
Yeah,
but it does remind you of being in college and waking up at like 11 o'clock or even close to noon and just laying out on the floor, and then here it is game day, and it gives you like a half hour before the cobwebs, for whatever before. I was already up early, so not really. That's all on the side. Let's get to. I wanted to ask you about your Sunday, and there were a lot of people that were sweating. They were sweating it out. I was one of those, and I wanted to ask you of Selection Sunday. Did you find the majority of Michigan fans that you were encountering, were they confident? Were they nervous about the Wolverines getting that bid?
Yeah. So I have a lot of buddies that are either Michigan fans or Michigan State fans. I even have some friends who are Ohio State fans, and so just being my age and everything, a lot of my buddies are still passionate fans and all of that, and outspoken, I guess you could say. So I had a hard time kind of differentiating the people who were just saying Michigan wasn't going to make it because they were just trying to say that, or if they were analyzing the situation. But yeah, I think a lot of Michigan fans were concerned because anything could happen. I mean, I thought Texas A&M was for sure going to get in with the 2 wins they had in the tournament, in the SEC tournament, but that didn't happen, right? So I think everyone was a little bit on eggshells. To me, though, like I'm looking at the situation from like just a completely literal perspective, and there's the branding of Michigan, and anyone who says that branding isn't considered in tournament bids is wrong. Like that, it's 100% a part of the process. And then they had a lot of quad 1 wins, and they had a lot of good wins. I mean, they blew out Purdue. Like they ran through Purdue, they ran through Michigan State. They beat Indiana on the road. They had some impressive wins this year. Granted, the record's not pretty. The loss to Minnesota is really bad, really, really bad. The first round exit in the Big Ten tournament is like the real scare there. So I think that was more of what it was just people were panicking because of the way Michigan lost to Indiana in that game, particularly. And they had that momentum going into it where they had kind of secured that tournament bid, seemingly at least. And then that happened. So, yeah, I think the panic was there. I just don't think that me in particular, I thought for sure they were going to get in. And if they didn't, I was going to be pretty stunned. But I can see both sides of it. I just think that the wins were too impressive to keep them out.
Yeah, I was feeling play-in game, which
yes, I agree.
Stated.
I agree. I thought for sure they would have a playing game.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. What I thought with the weird Michigan fan, and it's always, you got to be careful there because you're online and you're not 100% sure that they're Michigan fans, even if they're claiming that they are.
Right, exactly. That's the struggle, man.
We don't deserve to be in the tournament. It's like, okay, that's fine. I like if you don't want to. They haven't had the greatest year, you get that, but if you've been around where they haven't been in, believe me, just getting this week, these days right here, if you're not in and you don't make it on Sunday, you're sitting around like, oh my God, this is what it's all about. Guys like Justice only watch this time of year. Now they're not even going to watch Michigan, and there's a lot of, that are like
man.
that. And, I think Dayton and Texas A&M and Xavier, they'll all go back and they'll look and they'll say, hey, we could have won this game or that game.
Right.
And we would have given ourselves a better case. To your point about arranging things, Duke, there's no question they're the story. If we just take a step back,
Right.
from Michigan and the Big Ten, they're the number one story of this tournament. Coach K didn't get it done in the ACC championship or in the ACC tournament. He got bounced in his final game there against North Carolina. The Hokies took him down, so they gave Coach K a 2 seed, and Tennessee, who Michigan will likely see if they get a victory. They'll see him in round 2. Tennessee's definitely underseeded. So Michigan's going to get a tougher 3 seed, if you put it in air quotes there. And Michigan State, your couple friends over there, they're probably even though you look at that and you know that you're going to have to sign up for a few dicey calls,
Right.
but Duke's not this powerhouse number 2 seed. You can see that they can be beat. The Tar Heels did it, and so did the Hokies just recently.
Yeah, and I think that Michigan had a tough draw there because they're going to be the victim of Tennessee being underseeded right now. I mean, that's if Michigan wins in the first round, right? It has to beat a good Colorado State team by all means, and but whoever wins that game, regardless of if it's Michigan or Colorado State, I mean, that's not ideal. Like you would definitely rather face any other 3 seed than Tennessee because in the little basketball that I have watched this year, I have watched a lot of SEC, and I've talked with my grandpa's a diehard Kentucky fan, always has been, always will be, and he and I talked about the SEC and Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky. Those are 3 teams that could win the tournament, right? So Tennessee wouldn't shock me if they come out of this region, honestly. So I think they're criminally underseeded. And then you talk about Duke. We don't really need to even go on. I think it's just Duke. It's just who they are. It's how it's always been. Does it change when Coach K leaves? No, it's not going to change. It's always going to be this Duke team that they've always been in the program, and it's just how it is, I guess. I mean, we could go on and on and on about how Duke this and Duke that, and by all means we should because it's warranted. But yeah, I mean, they're overseeded. Like they had a really bad ending to the season. Like you're talking to somebody who really caught the end of the season at a national level more than the first. And the version of Duke that I've seen is like not even hardly a 4 seed. I mean, they have one of the best players, Panchero. I mean, he's unbelievable. And so they have the guys to go do that. But like, how many years has Duke had the guys to go win a championship and hasn't lately? I mean, you think about the Zion year where they got beat by a Michigan State team that was like decent, but I mean, they didn't deserve to beat a team with those kind of guys with RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson, and who was the other one that was on that team at the time? He was
You mentioned RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish.
Cam Reddish was the other one. Yes. So you talk about 3 pro guys in one lineup, three good pro guys. I mean, Reddish not so much, but the other 2, 3 good pro guys in one lineup. So, I don't know, man. It's Duke. It's one of those things where you just gotta like, well, if they didn't deserve to be a 2 seed, then they're not going to win too much. They're not going to last long enough for it to matter anyway. So.
That's a big storyline. Of course, Duke, all the cameras are going to be fixed there on Coach K. So Michigan State, maybe we'll have to deal with that if they don't have the Hoyer revenge game, that they've got going on.
Yeah, I'd rather see Vermont have to take on Duke than Arkansas because I don't think Vermont has a chance against Arkansas, but I think that they could have, matched up with Duke at least a little bit. I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of other 13. I mean, I don't know. A 15 seed's tough. I mean, obviously Michigan State, Middle Tennessee State a couple years ago, and I think it happened again last year or 2 years ago with a 2 and 15. But I mean, there's an obvious difference between being a 4-13 and a 2-15. 4-13s happen seemingly every year, every other year, whereas 2-15 is just so few and far in between.
I said Hoyer. He just resigned with the Patriots. Foster Lawyer.
From Davidson, yeah.
That'll
be fun. That'll be fun. That'll be good. I mean,
those kind of revenge games, and plus, if you look, the odds makers. I'm sure your State fans, the few that I know, have already, said you guys got a better draw than we did. Like this, because they're the underdog. I'm
Right.
sorry, they're underdog against Davidson and Michigan.
Which I think is just bait,
It's
by
the
the way.
favorite.
I think it's just bait. Personally, I
Well,
mean, I'm doing a nice sharpening the edge column for March Madness that covers pretty much every game, and it's a monster, and it's going to be out tomorrow morning, and make sure you see it. But like, that's bait. I think they're like take Davidson, and everyone's. It's just one of those things where when March Madness comes, upsets happen. Yes, 110%, but upsets are also trendy, and trendy is usually what wins Vegas money. Trendy is usually what wins Vegas money. Right? It's just kind of what happens. It happens every year. So
we'll be looking for this. That was a little bit of a not an inside joke, but an inside point there. Justice on the Wolverine Den almost daily. He's putting on sharpening the edge. I mean, he is looking at the handicapping aspect of the tournament and everything else.
Usually take 1 day off every week. Like one day a week, I'll just kind of stay away from the board. There's just weeks where I go like 2 or 3 weeks in a row of straight picks, and I'll take a day. Like yesterday, we didn't have picks because we had the conference tournaments, and I had like, I don't know, 24 picks through 3 days, I think, or something like that. So Monday we just took off because he had some NBA and NHL stuff, but
hey, even the man upstairs rested 1 day a week. So
exactly.
There were a lot of this, this is the way it works every year. You have Selection Sunday, and then leading up to Thursday, you have to have some snubs, and seeding. And Michigan ended up being one of the storylines, and most of it, you just looked at their record, 17-4. That's a sad looking record. That right. Automatically you're saying Michigan's just getting in because they're Michigan and everything else. There are other things. The strength of schedule was big. We put some of those numbers up there. The net, which is important, and those quad ones, those are important as well. That ultimately looked like it ruled the day for Michigan when you compared them to Texas A&M or Dayton. And so, yeah, it didn't look great, but when you start holding them up to some of those other teams that were also on the bubble, Brandon, I think that's what ended up being able to get U of M in. It didn't hurt that they're Michigan either.
Yeah, it definitely didn't hurt they're Michigan. But first and foremost, they have the same amount of quad one wins. Look at who those quad one games are against. Michigan's in the Big Ten. It's a conference that's unquestionably better than the Mountain West. There's good teams in the Mountain West, and Colorado State's a good team. And I'm not sitting here.
Mountain West got like 5 teams in.
That's all I'm saying. Like it's a very good conference, but the quad one, they've played 8. Michigan's played 15. Like you're bound to be a little more wear and tear along the way when you lose your head coach for 5 games. You are dealing with the most random injuries sometimes. Eli Brooks mysteriously out. People forget about that stretch of this season that was miserable because of the COVID that they had to deal with, which was, you correct me if I'm wrong, but Michigan's COVID situation was up there with anyone else's in the country, like any other schools. Like it was brutal. They were losing everyone, and they were playing games, canceling games. And then when they played the games, they were without so many guys at points in time. And they forget about that little stretch where they lost those 4 games. So I think it's one of those things where, like, I'm not sitting here saying Michigan's going to win this game. Like, I'm not ready to make that call yet. I'm going to make my prediction tomorrow. But I still think that when it comes to 6 and 11 seeds, like, you can 100% say Virginia Tech's the hottest of the bunch when it comes to the 11s. But Michigan's probably the most talented, and their talent. We can't sit here and say Michigan isn't talented, right? Like we've seen them at their ceiling, and I think that's what attracted the tourney bid was guys like Caleb Houston can wake up and play like all Americans, and guys like Hunter Dickinson typically always play like one to that caliber, right? And then Devontae Jones can come out of a cage and play really well. Terrence Williams has played really well down the stretch these last few games, right? So Moussa Diabate has been one of the most electrifying freshmen in the conference. So Michigan has those guys. It's not a team that comes in with heavy guard play and, like Stauskas and Stu Douglas and Zach Novak. It's not like one of those teams where they just play like flashy 5-out perimeter, live by the sword, die by the sword basketball, right? This is a team that has the makings and, like we thought before the season, to be a national champion. I mean, that was pretty unequivocal, right? Was that like everyone kind of was a consensus. Everyone thought Michigan had the roster to win a title. They have the same roster. It hasn't performed to the degree that they wanted to, by all means, but they've showcased that they can do that in the game against Purdue, where they just blew them out. The game against Michigan State, where they just blew them out. On the road to Indiana, right? And the first half against Indiana. So they've had these flashes, right? And it hasn't been totally random. They've just lost some close games along the way. They've gotten beat up along the way. They've dealt with some injury along the way. They've dealt with some COVID along. They've had some adversity. They've lost their head coach, so it's just one of those things, I guess, for me, where it's like Michigan clearly belongs in this tournament when it comes to talent, brand, and their strength of schedule matched with their wins against everyone else's in the tournament. There was no way you can make a case that Michigan wasn't going to make the tournament. Could you make a case for a lower seed? Sure. Playing game? Sure. By all means, 110%. But to say they're not in the tournament, I think that's crazy based on what they've done in the conference with the most bids. So,
well, I think that they're going to beat Colorado State, and I think Tennessee is going to beat whoever they're playing, Longwood or whatever. I've never heard of that school, but so it's a matchup, and the Vols will be probably favored by 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, I think Tennessee might win that bracket, man, that region. I mean, they're a good team.
Well, if Michigan, it wouldn't be the craziest thing. So I don't think they're going to beat. I'm not going to pick them to beat Tennessee, but being a 7 to 8 point underdog, and being this 11 seed where it hurts you in the second round. Once you get to the second round, you're going to have to play a tough team. But if you go out there and you are able to, let's just say, even though I don't think it's going to happen, beat Tennessee, well, you're in essence a 3 seed, and then who knows? We've seen it. We've seen brackets open up. It's opened up for Michigan before. They dodged North Carolina one year. They got, Sister Jean one season. So these things happen.
Right.
You just got to just get some wins here. I'm not predicting that Michigan will beat Tennessee. I'll have to see that to believe it. But I think they've got a pretty good chance. The low scoring, this Roddy kid from Colorado State, who was the Mountain West Player of the Year, he's going to be tough. Eli Brooks will have his hands full. You mentioned Terrence Williams. I think he'll get the assignment coming in off the bench. He seems to be the kind of size, like a bigger player like Williams.
He's got the attitude too, like he's got that aura about him. He's got that energy. And I don't know if you noticed this, Dennis, or if anyone at home has, but Terrence Williams, as he's gotten into this little ascension he's on here towards the end of the year, where you remember how slow he was for a while there, like just he was bricking everything and wasn't very serviceable on the other side of the ball in the middle of the season there. He's kind of become a little bit more calm, cool, and collected when he's making shots and all that, but like he's still in your ear. He still talks. He's still very much so has that demeanor about him that you want to shut down a guy like that. And then not to mention, I mean, Colorado State's probably got more to lose than Michigan in this matchup, right? You're a 6 seed. It's probably one of the best teams Colorado State's ever had. That kid's the player of the year from his conference. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think the Michigan probably has a little bit more to play for, given that it is trying to A, revive its season that was so disappointing, and B, coming off of that loss in the tournament. So, I get it. Colorado State's got like a heavyweight Cinderella type of look to them, where they're a 6 seed, so they're not considered a Cinderella if they make it far, but they're still Colorado State, and they're out of a group of 5 conference. So, like, if they do, they are kind of considered one.
Well, great point about Colorado State. You know what? I went out to Boulder a couple of years ago, and that's not, that's where Colorado is, but Colorado State's pretty close, and that's a beautiful country out there. So they don't need sports. They can just go out and go hiking and just go out and look at the mountains. So they can do that on Thursday. They can also do that for the opener in football, which is September 3rd, when Colorado State comes all the way to Ann Arbor. They'll go on back to wherever it is there in the Rockies and just be able to take in all that scenery and that beautiful air. And Brandon, that takes us to football here. Spring practice is going on. I put a tweet up from Andrell Anthony Jr., who said 2 years loading, and he had a spaceship there, which I liked, and some pictures of Anthony. And I wanted to ask you, there's a lot out there. I saw Josh Henske. I was counting up the nuggets, and it's almost multiple digit nuggets that he was putting on the Maize and Blue Review in the story that he had pinned up. But what can you tell people that are watching and listening right now, one thing about spring that you would consider a nugget?
It's a good one. That's a good one. Well, I can start off with
he's the fastest guy on the team. No, I'm just making things up. I'm not sure that he is, but so go ahead.
Yeah, I think Greg Crippen has challenged Oluwatimi more than we thought he would at center. I know it's kind of boring. I'll add a couple more too, but yeah, I think Greg Crippen's done like a really, really good job this spring by all accounts, and has impressed everyone early. And they knew that was going to happen because he's good. I mean, that's why I took him in the class last year. So, but Olu was kind of assumed.
Surprise, only because not that Aluskin Oluwatimi such a was one of the top 3 centers last year.
Right.
I also, when Harbaugh spoke to that news conference that you went to, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, he mentioned the question was about Oluwatimi in he mentioned Atterbury, who was looking good at center as well, which was a surprise to me because Crippen was the guy that I thought was put. So, but I know you're on top of it. That's just me listening to the coach thinking, oh, okay, Reese Atterbury, they like him.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, Harbaugh likes his guys, but I think, and he loves mentioning guys who are under the radar in press conferences because where else are they going to be mentioned, right? Like we're not going to talk too much about the third string center. Bless his heart. We're not gonna do a feature on the third string center unless he's got some glowing story for us. So I think Harbaugh likes taking. I think that's why he earns more respect out of his players than he earns out of media because like he does that kind of stuff, right? Those are the little things, right? Where he gets asked about Olu, who's this high profile transfer, third, like you said, third best center in the country last year according to the award finalists. So yeah, I think when he has the opportunity to showcase one of his players that are great in practice, but probably are not going to get the nod this year, but could in the future. Like he likes to loft that credit. He does it with the quarterbacks a lot too, like Alan Bowman. He does that quite a bit as well. So, but yeah, it's Crippen. Like Crippen's the one pushing Olu, and I think that's kind of been a little bit of a surprise because we kind of assumed Olu was just going to take that spot, and I do fully believe that Olu will be the starting center still at this time just because of what he brings to the table. He's an NFL center, right? So it's hard to keep him off the field, but it'll be hard to keep Crippen off the field too. Maybe find a different spot for him. I don't know. It's just they've got so much talent in there between Trevor Keegan, Zach Zinner, and Ryan Hayes, and so there's just so much going on for that team right now. It's just for that offensive line specifically. I mean, this is a good team. This is a good offense.
It sounded like you just named off the starting offensive line with the exception of the right tackle because Hayes, we would assume be the left tackle. Trevor Keegan, who you mentioned, left guard. Oluwatimi, we've been talking about at center. Zach Zinner, I almost guarantee that he'll be the right guard. He's probably the best offensive lineman on that line. And then out at right tackle, Carson Barnhart, but Harbaugh mentioned Trente Jones.
Yeah.
And I want to know if he's going to have his jersey with his name on the back because last year he was coming into that Buffalo package and he always had 80 on. It was like, well, who's this guy?
But yeah, I think Trente has the highest ceiling for them and the best upside. I think he's probably the most physically gifted between the two, Barnhart and Jones. And Jones had more reps last year. You mentioned how he came in with the extra number and all of that and was in there in the packages where they were running the ball down throats, and they loved doing it with him. And so I think he earns that spot at right tackle. I think it's way too early to tell, so I'm not going to call anything. I'm just not going to call anything set yet.
That's more of a stone right now.
Yeah, it's more of a fall camp thing. I think you're looking at right tackle. That's a very serious position to consider. It's not like running back where it's like, we really like Corum right now. We really like Edwards right now, but we can just flash them both. It's not a position where you really are substituting at all. Like you're sticking with the same line pretty much the whole time. So, and that's something that they can carefully consider. They're not rushing anything there. Michigan's become very patient with their position races too, especially ones like that, and they're very open-ended when it comes to those. That they're letting these things kind of manifest themselves rather than forcing them. So yeah, I think that's more of a fall camp thing. But I do like Trente more than Barnhart at this juncture, just because of what he brings to the table physically and the upside and the experience, the snaps he's had last year. And, what they want to do this year is not going to exactly replicate what they did last year running the ball. I think that they're going to have that identity. However, this receiving core is worlds better Now, remember the Western Michigan game where they were letting Cade kind of air it out, right, with Ronnie Bell, and then slowly but surely they kind of tapped back into like simply just running the ball, which worked for them, right? And if it's not broke, don't fix it. But when you return Ronnie Bell and you add Darius Clemens and Amarian Walker, who are probably going to make an impact in some form of capacity, and don't count out Tyler Morris either. But I mean, Darius Clemens is like, we talked about it on signing days, and he's an anomaly. He's 6'4", and he's running like a 4.4, 4.3. I think Amarian's probably quicker, and he's nearly as big as he is. But those two, like, it's going to be hard to look at them and keep them off the field. Not to mention, you just mentioned Andrew Anthony, who you come back with too as a sophomore. They got quite the crop, man. And Cornelius Johnson's back. Be remiss not to mention Eric All and Luke Shoemaker as targets too. And Colson Loveland's probably going to get some run in that group as well. So, I mean, it's a very exciting offense this year to even talk about, just because in the past we've been kind of speculating like who's going to step up, who's going to step up, who's going to – not really a step up thing. They returned so much production, right? You're hoping that – I mean, at center, you have the best problem you could possibly have is that you have two really good centers. It's so hard to have one really good center. You have two, and apparently you have three if Harbaugh's not lying to us with Atterbury. So great problem to have. And then you look at the right tackle race. I think Jones and Barnhart could probably start on multiple teams in the Big Ten at right tackle. Good problem to have. You look at the receiving core. I mean, they're like 6 deep with guys who could probably go in there and start on most of the teams in this conference, and Andre Anthony and Ronnie Bell and Cornelius Johnson and Darius Clemens and Amarian Walker. And then you have
Clemens, Donnie. I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I
remember
seeing his picture on Rivals, just his headshot, but you saw he looked like DK Metcalf from the Seahawks. I mean,
now you remember, tell me you remember I made that comparison on signing day. So when Mel Kiper in like 4 years, Mel Kiper is blasting DK Metcalf stuff on ESPN, I just put me in the parentheses, Mel, because
I was trying to figure out who I snatched that from. It was you. I should have known because you've got the cutoff shirt. You know, you're ready to go. You're ready to go too.
I was waiting
for something. You got a story coming out tomorrow. You're ready for March Madness. Do you have any picks for us? I know you got anybody that's cutting down the nets? You want
a champion?
Well, you got a Final Four. I put mine out there, and Gonzaga is an easy one, but I went with a bunch of long shots.
Been in bounce around mode? You ever hear about that bounce around mode with the tournament? That's me right now. I'm in bounce around mode. I'm like, okay. This is the problem with not watching college basketball enough until the tournament comes, because you're like, all right, well, the Big Ten is this guy can do that. And all of a sudden you're really heavily picking the Big Ten. And you're like, okay, but what about the other conferences that
I did that last year. I should have learned my lesson. I've got Illinois and Iowa.
You learned it.
I did not learn my lesson.
Oh, well, no, because you have 2 in your Final Four. So I guess you're right. Yeah.
I won the championship game. That's not good.
Yeah. My roommate has Iowa in his Final Four, and I've thought about it, but I've got Kentucky in mind, and I've got Arizona, and I've got Gonzaga, just because I don't think anybody can handle Gonzaga's size and versatility. And then I can't decide on this bottom right, but I am really leaning towards Wisconsin and Iowa in the Elite Eight, and then taking Wisconsin, which I don't want to do because I don't think Wisconsin's that good, but they are good enough to win a championship. I mean, now I think they're good enough to make the Elite Eight. I don't know if they're good enough to get to the Final Four, but they might luck out and face an Iowa team that they've faced before. And I don't know. I'm in my own head about the bottom right region's crazy.
Just a minute. Who was that in your family that's a big Kentucky fan?
My grandpa.
Oh, grandpa. Okay. All right.
And tell you what, his name is Wally, so I'll give him a shot. He watches every so often, if you can figure out YouTube, bless his heart. So my grandpa is a diehard Kentucky fan. But that being said, he is the most pessimistic, realistic fan ever. So he never picks Kentucky because of X, Y, and Z. He'll just, they can't do this, they can't do that. He picked them like with confidence. He's like, they have a good draw, they have a good region. He's like, this is the best draw they've ever had. He's like, I've been watching for 50 years. This is the best draw they've ever had in the tournament. They should, if they play to their ability, they should get to the Final Four with ease, not with ease, but seemingly with ease. He's like, and then it's just if they can handle Gonzaga's size, and like he thinks that he kind of uses, he's granted 78 years old. So his explanation was about what you would think it is. Gonzaga doesn't play in a good enough conference to compare to Kentucky. And we say it every year, but it's reasonable. We see it every year, but it's reasonable. So I think Kentucky goes to the national championship, and I can't decide if they're going to face Arizona or if they're going to face one of those teams I mentioned in that bottom right region, because I cannot figure that region out to save my life. I do not believe in Kansas whatsoever, though. I am completely off Kansas. I don't know who I'm going to pick. That probably means Kansas is going to win it all, but I'm completely off Kansas. I can tell you that much. As far as betting goes, I have to think that I was reading about it. I like Ohio State in that opener. I think they're much better than Loyola. So I like Ohio State in that game. And then apart from that, there's another game that I can't think of right now. I'm looking at the bracket that I really like.
I don't like Ohio State. You know why? That offense that Loyola runs, Ohio State's a terrible defensive team, and I just can't see them, even though they have days to practice this, these back cuts that drives teams crazy. And I'm taking Sister Jean outright in that game right there. Hate to go again.
Yeah, the other game was Akron. I like Akron to cover. I think they're going to get like 8 or 9 points, but I think they're like 12 right now. I think we'll get down to that. I'll take Akron. Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of. But no, I hear you with Ohio State. I just think that Liddell is going to feast personally. So, and I think that's typically what happens in those high-profile games. Those bigs are difference makers in those kinds of games because they're so much physically stronger and more dominant underneath, and those are kind of the difference makers in the tournament. Is what can we make easy tonight? You can't really, if you make shots easy, then that's like natural. You don't game plan to make shots easy. Like you want to, like you create spots and you create open shots, but like making them is it's either going to happen or it's not. And the big guys are more guaranteed, I think, and that's why Michigan can rely on Dickinson so much.
I do know this after Duke and Coach K, this being his last tournament and everything. One of the biggest storylines, if not the biggest storyline, is the Big Ten. They have so many teams in here, and last year they were a flop. So, not that I'll be rooting for Ohio State or anything like that.
How could you ever?
Yeah, right. That's it. If they lose, hey, good for the Big Ten. Who cares if they lose? Right. All right, Justice, great job. Sorry for keeping you so long.
Oh, you're good.
We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
And we'll look for your stories. You look for my survivor pool, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds like a plan, Dennis. Thanks for having me, my friend.